Hi, I'm Evelyn Tribole, and welcome to day 2 of the Intuitive Eating Instagram 10-day series. And today I'm going to unpack Principle 2, Honor Your Hunger. Now, this sounds so basic, but I want to really emphasize the nuances around the principles of intuitive eating, and hunger is a really good example of that. And one of the things that I like to look at is why we have hunger. First of all, it's a natural biological cue, and it's been so pathologized in diet culture. Hunger is a sign that we are alive. Hunger is a sign that we need energy. And imagine if we can embrace that and welcome hunger. But it's been so pathologized, and I've had so many clients who in their histories have tried to fake out hunger that in this process they end up getting very confused about the cues from their body, and it really erodes trust in their connection with the body. And honoring your hunger is actually a really wonderful pathway of healing your relationship with food and that trust one bite at a time. One bite at a time. So here's some things I want you to think about. That from a biological basis, our body is wired to survive. And part of what we need for our survival is energy. And if we're not getting enough to eat, our cells go into motion. They are amazing. And we're going to start focusing on food, wanting food, doing whatever we can to eat. And so what happens is when you go on a imposed famine, otherwise known as a diet or a lifestyle, or whatever diet culture terms like to be thrown around, your little cells are like, and all of a sudden, you might notice you are experiencing loss of control eating. And this is something that's been documented in many, many, many studies, this loss of control eating. And what I'd like you to start viewing this as is this is actually my body trying to save me. Yeah, intellectually, we know, hopefully, that wherever you're at, there's not a famine happening or there's not food insecurity happening, but your cells don't know this. And one of the things I like to look at is another survival mechanism we have, and that has to do with breathing. So air is to our survival as food is to our survival. And so imagine now, I love to play in the ocean, by the way, that big set of wave comes, you hold your breath, and you finally come up for air because the waves are gone, and you take a big inhale for your life. And no one calls that loss of control breathing. Everybody knows, oh, that's a natural consequence of insufficient air. No one says, oh my God, you're addicted to air. You got to stop that. It's an accepted norm because that's what our bodies do to survive. And that's the similar thing that happens with eating. We have this loss of control eating, and we haven't had enough to eat consistently, and especially when there's been a history of dieting. So I want you to know that. So one of the things I want you to start looking at is this idea of befriending this cue that your body has. And how do we do this? How do we do something that sounds so basic? And I have a lot of patients that get frustrated with this because it sounds so basic. But when you've had years of following rules and years of following disconnection, it's going to take some time, and that's okay. And what's needed is deep listening and consistency. And so one of the things I like to look at is even asking some questions like, what is pleasant hunger feel like to you? And most of the time when I ask that question, most people have a hard time answering it if they've had a long history of being in diet culture, because hunger has been so pathologized. And one way I look at pleasant hunger, as you start to get thoughts of eating, it's like, oh my gosh, lunch sounds really good, or oh, I'm in the mood for a cheeseburger for dinner, whatever that happens to be. Having thoughts of eating is actually a normal sign of hunger. It's a pleasant sign. You might have a gentle rumbling in your stomach, or maybe no rumbling at all, but just like, oh yeah, it sounds kind of good. It's not urgent. On the converse side, what does unpleasant hunger feel like? Or at least I like to call it primal hunger. That's like the get out of my way. I got to eat right now. It's urgent and it's intense, and it can really feel scary. And if you have a history of binge eating, it can feel super, super scary. And so I find it really helpful to recognize, oh, this is my biological primal hunger. And it can kind of give you some perspective. My body needs to be fed. I've gone too long without eating. And so perhaps you have more familiarity with that. And so this is one way that we can start to look at the connection with our body. So I look forward to seeing all your comments on today's prompt in my Instagram grid. I've been loving your comments. I've been overwhelmed in a really, really wonderful way. And I'm so glad that you're here. So stay tuned.